let's move on to Mr. Yves Desbazeille from Nucleareurope. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Marcus, and thank you for inviting me. So I think, I do have a presentation, and I'm going to, first of all, just to remind a few numbers, but it was somehow already put forward by Jan, but still, I think it's important to reset a little bit the scene. And then I will go a little bit more in the detail of the SMR partnership, or that should talk about pre-partnership for now. Yes, without further ado. So just a reminder that Nucleareurope is an association of national associations, so a sort of confederation in a way. We have members across Europe, EU, but also non-EU. So non-EU is Switzerland, UK, and Ukraine. And most of our members are members where you have nuclear power in operation, with the only exception of Italy. Italy is a member of Nucleareurope, but not operating any NPP, as you know. And we also have a couple of corporate members, which are listed on the bottom left-hand side. And obviously, SAFO here is one of our prominent members. I must say it's also a lot of companies which are represented by Nucleareurope indirectly. And I think the 3,000 figure is outdated. It's much more now. Because among our members, a lot of small and intermediate-sized industries have also joined their own national association, and it shows also some regain in interest because some companies were not so much interested in nuclear, and now they are starting to come back and just knock on the door and say, guys, what's happening? Can we help? So I think it's an interesting signal. Figures. So figures, it's 102 nuclear reactors. So it's 102 since 2 days ago. You probably heard that the bad news that Tihange 2 has now been phased out. This is unfortunate if you count the fact that Doel 3 in Belgium also was phased out in September. It's the equivalent of the renewable production of Belgium, which have been removed. So it's really a step backward, I would say. And this is unfortunately something which is not well understood by some politicians. Total turnover, 100 billion euros, 1 million jobs, 25% of electricity. And the 1 million job, 100 billion euros is not only on power, it's a whole ecosystem. So when I say ecosystem, it includes research, medical application, and other industrial application. So there are different applications, as you know. I'm not going to tell you anything new here. We produce almost 50% of low carbon generation. I know this term of low carbon is something that tends to now to be criticized because it's also a way for gas industry to free ride, I would say, pretending that they are low carbon, but they are lower for sure than coal. I think we should now shift to a new storytelling, talking about fossil-free generation. I think it's really the way forward. We know that we will leave aside a lot of people in the debates, but for now, I think that one example of taxonomy is a typical one. Gas plus nuclear. The fact that we've been classified as I would say, a temporary solution. What I believe doesn't make sense, but it was because of gas. So picture of you will know, which is very well known, electricity map, a very powerful tool to, I would say, make some reality check on between what people believe are the real champion in Europe and what is the truth. So what the truth is, Sweden is one champion on decarbonization. What is not true is Germany is as well. despite being presented as the emblematic example, it's not the case if you look at numbers. Once again, nothing really new, but I think it's important to also remind that at the end of the day, what will be the important final decision making will be facts and figures. And we need to get rid of ideology. It's not always the case yet in Europe, but at some point of time, you have to take numbers into account. This famous, or not famous, I don't know how you are familiar with this energy trilemma. I think it's just here to remind that we've come from, I would say, a situation which not that old, let's say 18 months ago, was the only aspect which was of concern for the, I would say, decision makers was decarbonization, environmental aspect. They are still there, but some were totally left aside. And I think one is particularly back on the agenda at the highest level, and it was also mentioned by Jan before, the question of security of supply. Reliability of supply, sovereignty, energy independence, all that big words were, I would say, really downplayed in the debate, and now we need really to get back to that. Affordability, obviously, also is a very important topic now, and we've seen this in the past months with the European Commission struggling with member states to find solutions to limit the increase on energy prices. I think so. It's important to bear in mind that now we have to really take into account the question of security of supply, affordability, and with this in mind, I believe that nuclear is really back on the stage, because we know that it's, at the end of the day, it may be too costly for some, but at the end, but it provides reliable and safe power, and this for a very long term. So it's something which has to be taken into account, and this is something which has also to be reflected in the market itself. And I will finish on that, go to SMRs, but I think this question of market reform and the question of how to incentivize long-term, high capex, low carbon solution will be high and very important. And then the question of how much of new nuclear we need. There are different scenarios. We have some which I think go up to 150 gigawatt of installed capacity in 2050. It's not the one the Commission has today in its main scenario, but with different application, with producing not only power, this may be the case at the end of the day. Then the question is, can we deliver? And I will not go more on that. And I will straight go to the question to the issue of SMR, what we call pre-partnership. I'm going to explain why we call it pre-partnership. So I'm aware this slide is pretty packed, but just to remind a little bit of where we're coming from. So I would say the first step was back in 2019, a so-called EU-US SMR summit, where at the end of the day, we were in a situation where on the one side you have Americans coming with a lot of ready solutions or close to solutions, and on the other side the EU with basically nothing in its plate, nothing real. So then the reflection internally with the European Commission was to say, okay, let's try and figure out how we can, on our side, also think about having something at European level. Then there had been some workshops, discussions, and we came up with a proposal for a partnership, which would be consist in having a collaboration between industry, the research community, potential interested customers, and EU policy makers and regulators. And this basically ended up with the creation of the partnership and the steering committee, with the objective, general objective, which is to enable what would be the condition to develop and accelerate the deployment of SMRs across Europe, and also based on in compliance with the two different treaties that are dealing with this topic. So Euratom on one side and the TFEU on the other. So this really this objective. You have sub-objective that which consist in looking at the capacity of supply chain. The question of licensing, I will come back on that. And also have a strategic research agenda that would include light water reactors, but also prepare for generation 4 advanced modular reactors. So what the steering committee does is really to coordinate the work of the different work streams. I'm going to explain quickly what are those work streams dealing with. And prepare and consider how we are going to implement the partnership, which framework to be used at EU level for this partnership. We have in mind some examples of a lot of coalition which have been set up in the recent past on batteries, hydrogen, and you name them. So that's basically, there are other examples. So really have to consider which framework we would like to use. And also, we basically are talking also with partners, and partners are countries from external from Europe, but also I would say global organization like the IAEA or OECD, NEA you've heard about yesterday. So that's basically the context. One important one, the work stream one, I think is important one. It's really to assess which market, which is the market we're talking about. And the market is power, clearly. So we know that on the 100 gigawatt of new installed capacity, that has to be, or 80 or what exact number is still to be known. But there will be some SMRs. It's difficult to say how many because there will be ramp up. We know that large reactors are available today. SMRs will be in the next years. So it depends on exactly how quick you want to develop your new capacities. But also, its market is also non-power applications. And this is where we really are starting from scratch. We know that there is a lot of potential, but it's still to be assessed exactly what we are talking about. And this will be very important also for the creation of a coalition or whatever the number, the name we're going to give. But you need to explain what are your main goal, and your main goal is to develop SMRs at a certain scale, certain speed, and basically what the framework you need to get there. Just a few numbers, what we're talking about. So these are numbers which have been used to build the case on the market itself. I was talking about power, clearly. So this is in 2040 the additional number of terawatt hours that's supposed to be produced per year. So today we are around 3,000. So it's 50% more. 80 gigawatts. This was comment. Hydrogen. There are very, I would say, high ambitions from the European Commission for 2030. So this is 20 million tons of hydrogen. This is the equivalent of 125 gigawatts of nuclear if you produce only this hydrogen with nuclear. So it shows a step. I must say today nobody has any clue on the way we're going to produce those 20 million tons. So it's really numbers on the paper, and we know that for sure they will never get there if we don't use nuclear to produce this low carbon hydrogen. Industrial heat, I will not comment much more, but it's also a lot of energy. And with 45% of the needs which are heat below 400 degrees, which mostly can be produced with light water reactors. This is the important number here. And for the rest, we'll need advanced to address the issue. And then the question of district heating also is key one. 2/3 of today, district heating is with fossil generation. I'm aware of the time. Workstream 2 licensing. Clearly, the idea is to look across the regulators and find some ways to have some common views on pre-licensing criterion to be considered in the SMR safety. So this is very important because we should avoid having SMRs design being different from one country to the other. Otherwise, I would say even the business model itself of SMR falls apart. And then we have gathered regulators, and they are starting to look at how to work better together and share views at the early stage. Workstream 3, I was already mentioned this in a way, which framework we're going to use for this SMR initiative, and then which sort of conducive investment environment and framework we need to get to trigger the SMR investments. And here we are not only talking about power once again, it can be industries themselves. We invest in SMRs, industrial parks. So we need to find a way to make this happen. Workstream 5 will not comment much more about that, but research is an important step, particularly for advanced. Workstream 4 is about supply chain adaptation. I think it's the key topic of today, with really the idea of finding a new business model for a supply chain. We're shifting from on-site construction to manufacturing. And I think it's really a changing paradigm that has to be well understood and well accompanied with the supply chain. Once again, a pact, you will have the slide, so I will not make me spend too much time, but there are a lot of questions around standardization, which code and standard we're talking about, which modularization, which type of modules we're going to ship on site, what is a reasonable way to separate out what is manufactured and what is assembled on site. The shift from quality safety concerns from on-site construction to factory manufacturing. It's also one of the main questions this Workstream 4 has to address. We have had a survey with a lot of suppliers and vendors with interesting figures. Once again, I leave the slides to you. This is preliminary conclusions. But I think what is important here is that most of the suppliers do not have any problem using different codes and standards. They are somehow used to, which is good, which is positive, because we know that there will not be only one single SMR technology in Europe. And they all are looking at, I would say, new technologies, additive manufacturing, augmented reality, big data, in order to make some breakthrough in the way they are assembling some different modules and elements. So this will be one of the key issues to be dealt with when we talk about SMRs. And then I leave it to you, and we can take questions. Yeah, so I will skip this one. You had a workshop on 14 October, maybe some of you were there or know, discussing what are the needs and where we are going to get. What are the next steps? So there are some steering committee meetings. We now have to gather all the reports for the different work streams. Bring this to, I would say, more political level, with a conclusion on, yes, there is a market, those are the hurdles and obstacles we need to overcome, to address. And what we need also is now we need a political endorsement at the highest level of the Commission. We are working on that together with Jan, and hopefully we'll be able to organize a stakeholder forum in the months to come. With really the idea is to gather ministers, commissioners, decision makers to say, yes, there is a need. We believe in SMRs, and we want this to happen. We want a coalition. We want to gather something. And I'm done. Sorry for the time.
No worries. Well, thanks a lot. So So just one kind of wrap-up question. When you have a unique overview, I think, of the situation in the European context, and taken all together and looking perhaps particularly on the supply chain issue, what are some of the sort of weak points that the European nuclear sort of industry need to address in order to achieve those numbers that you put on the slide there in terms of new capacity build?
I think the question is. There are two questions, capability and capacity. Capability, I think we have some suppliers who are able to be capable of doing things. The question is, the new question which really will have to be dealt with thoroughly, and will really have to think about how to ramp up, is a question of capacities. Because we are talking about, we are coming from an environment where we've built, I would say, 1 unit every 10 years in Europe since the last 30 years, to maybe 2, 3, 4 units a year. That will be that is the objective of the 30s today, being large SMRs. SMRs it maybe even many more, because we need to really to have serious effect. And this is a question of really capacities, how we can ramp up capacities, because all suppliers will have also to build some new manufacturers. We need, so that's really, there is a really thinking to be made on how we get this organized. We have some examples. We know that, for example, there is the aircraft industry, which will similarly have some different sites, production sites, assembly sites. And I think SMR business would be the same. We need to really to get organized. But I would say the competencies are here. And we have no worry for that. In Europe, you can find all the appropriate engineering capacity you need. What you need now is to put it into an industrial organization to make it happen.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for coming.
You're welcome.
Thanks.